in a series of e-learning focused webinars, which are part of our BSB Digital Strategy. So we've moved rapidly over the past few years in terms of our IT investment, our infrastructural improvements, and this has really enabled us to have the one-to-one device learning environment for most of our students actually. So with this in mind, our digital strategy has continued to grow and evolve in order to meet the needs of our whole learning community. And that includes you guys as well as the staff and the parents and the children, the students. So our recent one-to-one device survey that we sent out to parents really was super positive. We had some fantastic feedback, but it really did highlight some areas that we are going to be focusing upon as part of our strategy. I am Emma Overton. For anyone who doesn't know me, I am the head teacher of the Early Years and Primary Campus in Castelldefels, and I also lead on the digital strategy across BSB. So in order to proceed, you can see that we've started to record this session for any parents who can't make it and for our staff to watch at a later date. And also it's probably best if I ask you to close your cameras down, and your microphones will remain muted because it's the mode of the meeting. However, I really encourage you to use the chat function if there are any questions that crop up throughout the webinar. But I'm also going to add at the end a link to a form, a 5-second form for you to complete, but also for you to add any suggestions, ideas, or raise anything that you want us to support with. So today I am going to introduce Mark, also known as the ICT Evangelist. And Mark works with schools and academy trusts throughout the world, and he supports them with their educational journeys. Mark also presents globally at conferences, at meetings and exhibitions, raising the profile of technology in education. Yesterday, Mark was just telling me he was doing the closing keynote at the Frog Real World Learning Conference, and then he hopped over to the Bahamas to deliver an online safety webinar for parents at the prestigious Windsor School. So we're very delighted to have him. We've enlisted Mark for his expertise to support us with our BSB digital strategy. And he's going to be working with us throughout the rest of the year. It's not just, we don't just have him here today for the webinar. And he's really going to help us to meet the key objectives as part of our digital strategy. So whilst Mark is an educator in this field, he's also a parent of 2 boys, aged 10 and 12, facing the same worries and the same issues and concerns that you and I have as parents. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Mark, who's going to deliver this introductory webinar, highlighting some of the areas which is going to be kind of like the key focus for us in future lessons and sessions. Okay, Mark, I'm handing over to you. Welcome to BSB and welcome to our parent community.
Brilliant stuff. Thank you so much, Emma, and thank you to everyone for coming to join us in the session today. As we always find, or often find in these sorts of sessions, I'm going to share my screen now and bring up a little presentation that I've got to run through with you during the course of the session today. So I'll just bring that up now, and Emma, if you could be so kind as to tell me if you can see everything when it's all up in front of you.
I can see your screen, yeah, and you're just putting the translation mode on, which is going to be helpful for some of our parents as well. Perfect.
Well, thank you so much for the glowing recommendation and introduction there, Emma. Thank you. It's a real honour and privilege to work with any school, but working with the British School of Barcelona is of particular interest to me, not just because of its location and how that sort of sits with my background, but also as somebody I've worked with before. Emma is someone who is a world leader in her own right from her previous work with digital as well. So it's great to have the opportunity to continue that working relationship with Emma in her role at BSB. The purpose of the session today is to start to think around the ideas of the school's digital strategy. Digital strategy is a really important thing to consider when you're looking at many facets of teaching, learning and leadership in education. The three topical areas that we're going to explore today are future skills and their importance in terms of preparing our young people for a future which is unknown. We're also going to be exploring healthy habits for your digital life. That will include lots of things around screen time, around social media tools, how to try and support and help our children to navigate what can sometimes be a difficult landscape for them to engage in. And I'll be discussing some approaches to how we can do that, and there are some resources I'm going to be sharing with you during the presentation as well. Some of those will be available to you afterwards in the Cognita Connect app for you to read through at your own leisure. And then finally, we're going to think a little bit about social media and chat tools. What's been great in the preparation for the session today has been the way in which, and this is something which doesn't happen in every school, just to make you aware, but it's been fantastic to see the way in which BSB have been engaging with and interacting with not just you as parents and listening to your advice, your ideas, your concerns and responding to those, but also listening really carefully to student voice, listening to what your children say, what they want, how they want to work, all of these things. And I wanted to just take a moment to praise the work of BSB in this regard. I'm very fortunate to work with some amazing schools around the world, some of which have won huge awards. One of my clients, for example, recently won the Which School's Independent School of the Year award. I work with all sorts of schools in all sorts of settings all around the world, from Dubai to Hong Kong to the Bahamas to Bristol. What I see as I start to learn more about how things are done at BSB, the more I know they are a really world-class operation in terms of their approaches, in terms of how they listen to you as parents, how they respond to the needs of the children in the school. It is really amazing to see this happening. And these were all things that I didn't have to recommend that they did. The school was already doing it, and so part of that makes my job a little bit easier, but certainly it means that before I even started engaging with the school, it was already on a really great journey towards teaching and learning and using technology in purposeful, impactful ways. So why do we have a digital strategy, and what's involved, what sort of thinking goes on behind a digital strategy? Well, as parents, you don't need to know this, but I thought it was important that you are able to understand the thinking behind the decisions the school makes and the approaches that it takes. At the heart of all of these things, the school is trying to provide clarity. It's trying to build a modern curriculum which meets the needs of its learners. So there's consistency, there's challenge. So you can really raise up the progress of students within the school. There's the promotion of creativity, which we know is an absolutely essential skill. Developing collaborative skills, community, engagement and activities like we're engaging with in this webinar today is so important. Schools can't sit in isolation. It's great to see the whole community invested in the young people that attend the school. Making sure that learners are capable and able to access all of these things, and to develop compassion at the heart of everything that they do. This is absolutely fantastic to see. So how does the school go about developing its digital strategy? Well, teachers and students are at the absolute heart of everything that the school is trying to achieve. making sure that both of those key stakeholders have the support and the opportunities to progress and develop is absolutely fundamental to a winning, digital strategy. But there are lots of other things to consider which you might not be aware of. It's important, for example, to make sure that there's great training and CPD. CPD is professional development. It's another word in education for training. But alongside that, it's important, and the school has been considering, finance, how to make the investments in the infrastructure and to do that in a sustainable way. Making sure that this is all part of a strategic approach by the senior leadership team involving the school's development plan. That's what the SDP stands for. Making sure that there's good governance by the Cognita leadership team and the Cognita group as a whole. Making sure that there is enough capacity inside the school to make sure that everything still works, that there's capacity in terms of human resource and digital resource to make sure all of these things work and sort of sing in unison. It's also important to know that the school works really hard to make sure that your young people are safe and well looked after. The DSL is the designated safeguarding lead, and the school has got systems in place to make sure that when your children are using technology in school, that they are doing so in safe ways. So there's keyword filtering, there is a firewall which protects the students from inappropriate sites or tools which wouldn't be deemed appropriate for children of that age. Data privacy is also hugely on the mind of the school around things like GDPR and making sure that student data is held and used in correct ways. And finally, the school spends a lot of time thinking carefully about how children in the school who might have special needs, which could be physical or mental or lots of different needs, are met and are supported, not just with technology, but in every way, shape or form. And actually, what we see in education is that whilst this works and this thinking works around a digital strategy, the things we're discussing here are actually just as important in all aspects when you're thinking about bringing in and thinking about developing and moving forwards your curriculum, your teaching, your everything in the school. So what is it about future skills? Well, there are lots of different organisations who share about what the future skills of our learners might be like. Lots of those organisations have vested interests, but a great place that I always go to try and unpick, to try and find out where our needs and demands are going to be in the future is the World Economic Forum. And they, a few years ago, put out a future skills report. And I think this is a great baseline for us to refer to when we're thinking about what we can do to make sure that our learners are future ready. So in there they say that young people should have foundational literacies. I'll explore that in a little bit more depth in a moment, but you have those foundational literacies, then there are competencies that are required, and then there are character qualities that young people should have in order to help them operate in the future workplaces they will move into as they get older. The World Economic Forum they made all of this into a lovely diagram like this to highlight the different areas that students should be exploring. So if we sort of dive into foundational literacies for a second, these are things like general literacy, numeracy, scientific literacy, ICT literacy, financial literacy, and cultural and civic literacy. What does that mean in real life? Well, if we take ICT literacy, for example, it's important that students know how to use a word processor. But some of you might think, well, that means that my child needs to know how to use Microsoft Word. But as you may know, there are other word processing tools out there. You could use Pages, for example. You could use Google Docs instead. What's important is that young people get the skills so they can apply their knowledge to any word processing tool that may come their way in the future. And the same sort of thing applies to all of these sections here with literacy, numeracy and scientific literacy, financial literacy and cultural and civic literacy. One of the conversations I had with them before our session today was about cultural sensitivity in the things that I share with you. Things that are fine in England are different in Barcelona. I'll always remember a mistake I made when I said there's a phrase which is about not building your house on sandy land. And that relates to infrastructure and making sure that things are secure and you have foundational knowledge and all these different things. But the reason why that wasn't a good thing to say was because I said that at a conference in Dubai. Now, having that cultural and civic literacy, I, as an adult, should have known not to say that. We can all make mistakes. But what we can do as educators is create curricular learning opportunities and all of these things to make it so that students, young people, are aware of these things so that when they are in a situation such as I was, they do the right thing. And it's so important that learners are able to do that, whether it's related to normal literacy, numeracy, scientific literacy, so forth and so on. The next area asks for children to get experiences around critical thinking and problem solving and creativity and communication and collaboration. These really link in really closely into the ways in which teaching and learning can be delivered. When our young people are actually, out in the workplace, we will need them to be able to be collaborative. In working with Emma, I don't live in Barcelona, I live in England. So as adults, we have got these collaboration and communication skills. We're able to be creative in the resources we create, and we've been unpicking and solving problems as part of the process of working together too. What we can do as educators is embed these kinds of activities into the work we do with our young people within the curriculum to give them the opportunity to learn how to be creative and to communicate and to collaborate and solve problems, all these different things as they move through their time at the school. The next area tries to say that, as children move into the workplace, they will need these skills of being curious and to have their own initiative, to have resilience, persistence, grit, determination, the ability to stick at things when the going gets tough. They need to be adaptable because things change. When I became a teacher way back in 1997, I didn't think I'd be doing what I do now. I wanted to be a teacher to help young people. As I grew in my career, I realised that becoming a middle leader and then a senior leader gave me a bigger opportunity to have a bigger impact and to make a bigger difference. And as such, my skills had to adapt. We've seen huge adaptability from you as parents, from your children, to the teachers and leaders at the schools as well over the last 12 months in response to the pandemic. I think the response has been absolutely amazing from education as a place, full stop, not just at BSB. But these skills are so important, and that number 16 relates back to the one I mentioned a moment ago about literacy, cultural and civic literacy. It's important to have social and cultural awareness too. So when we have all of these things and bring them all together, we've got some really fantastic skills and competencies and literacies and qualities that together, can stand by us and be some real great cornerstones for whole lifelong learning. I say that every day is a learning day. I learn new things every single day, as I'm sure you do too. What's been great to see in my work so far with Emma and the team at the school has been that this is their approach too. Other areas that the schools have been considering are about the life skills that children need. This is something that has been developed by the DQ Institute. The skills and knowledge that children will need in order to operate in a digital world as we move forwards. Things around your identity as an online citizen, how you manage your own privacy, how you're able to distinguish between fake news and real news, good content, bad content, curating a fantastic digital footprint and how to do that and the impact of what you share online, having empathy that links into the compassion that I mentioned earlier, how to make sure you're safe online in terms of your own cybersecurity, or how to react and respond if you see some online bullying, how to manage one's own screen time and how to manage one's engagement when you're working, learning and sharing online. These can be broken down into further skill areas and jobs and other things that you can see on this diagram here, also from the DQ Institute. But again, what's lovely in unpicking the resources and all the planning and the work that the school is doing, it's great to see that these things are on the mind of all of the teachers and leaders in the school in making sure that your children are being prepared well for their future in this world. And as a parent myself, I'm pleased to say, and I wouldn't say this for every school that I've worked with, but I would, if I lived in Barcelona, I know which school I would like my children to be going to, because these values that the school are trying hard to embed as part of what they do are the things which I think are going to help your children do the best and be the best as they grow up and move forward to become purposeful members of society. So the digital strategy at BSB aims to incorporate and reflect upon all these things I'm sharing with you today. And I think that's a fantastic thing, not just because it gives the best opportunities for our children, but also it means that they are really at the front of their game, linking into the best of current best practice and best thinking around what is required and needed in education, whilst simultaneously linking directly to the requirements of the curriculum itself. Thing is, though, it's really important to remember there's a gentleman called John Hattie. He is a gentleman who has undertaken more research into what works in education than anyone else in the world so far. And one of the biggest and most impactful things that we can make sure that helps our young people get the best amount of progress is the strong relationship between home, child and school. And so with that in mind, there are lots of things that we can do as parents to best support our children. One of those is what you're doing right now. Turning up, representing, being engaged and being involved in your child's education is a great way to support them. It's a great way to support the school as well. And it's lovely, as Emma said, that you're able to feed into the conversation and to be involved in the decision-making process around the things that happen at the school. So at the end, please do take the time to fill in that quick form that Emma is going to share with you at the end of this session. But there are lots of things we can do as parents. Here are some strategies I wanted to share with you which we can use to help us and make the most of the opportunities that are available to our young people. So try and keep things simple and regular. Make sure that your child has a clear set time, space and area for completing their work. It doesn't have to be digital. It could be them sat down with their notebook. It could be them practicing their spellings or their times tables. It could be lots of different things, but we can help ourselves by doing things like keeping distractions off, asking your children to use things like the do not disturb feature, which comes on an iPad, so that when they are having their blocked time for their learning, they're not being disturbed by things. But try and support in those simple ways, and it can make a big difference to help keeping your child focused. I know with my own children with home learning, it's been really difficult to keep them focused. Little things around, the doorbell going, the phone ringing. There are lots of things we can do as adults to provide that safe space to help our children do the best they can with the work they're trying to do. And again, using the tools, the digital tools that are available to you, things like the calendar that's built into Outlook, or even the calendar that comes as part of the setup in iPad OS. But putting in there your meetings, your timetable, your homework, your prep, your activities, putting all of those things in there will really help free your mind and free your child's mind from having to remember all of those things, because they can refer back to them at any point in time without having to recall them. And that's great for enabling them to remain focused on the core business of learning, rather than remembering every minute deadline and attendance and club and everything else that they need to attend and be part of. Make sure as well that you try to use the tools that the school have provided to enable activities and learning to take place. So things like OneDrive for sharing files, using Teams for those conversations and attending lessons and accessing resources and all those different things. And you can further support your children by having conversations about their learning. The other area I wanted to share with you is about talking with the teachers. Yes, you can do that yourself through the Cognita Connect app. The Cognita Connect app is, I think, is a fantastic way for you to stay in the loop, to find out what is happening with learning and other activities in the school. But ask your child to speak and check in regularly with their teacher as well. I remember myself when I was teaching, that you would always have those students that you want to provide stretch and challenge for, who require it. There's always those students in the class who need extra support with certain things. But there are always those sort of students in the middle who never really put their hand up, who never really get involved and engaged. Speak with your child and ask them to speak with their teacher. Ask your child to ask their teacher, how am I getting on? How could I improve? How could I do better? How could I have got a higher mark? How could I have done better with this piece of work? Metacognition, as per the research of John Hattie, is the single most most impactful strategy that young people can lean on to help them with their progress. And metacognition is about knowing how to learn. And so having conversations about learning is a really great way of your child learning how to improve, learning how they best learn, the best approaches to take around things like revision, retrieval practice, spacing their practice, all of these different things, which will end up making them a much more effective learner at the end of it. And we can support our children with that by just having those conversations ourselves about learning too. Moving on, thinking about some healthy habits, I wanted to spend some time talking with you about some tools that you and your children have available to you to help with their use of technology. Screen time, I know, is a big issue. Lots of parents, myself included, worry about how much time children, my children too, spend using technology. This is a conversation for you in your household and what you feel is appropriate. The school can guide you about what they feel is appropriate time. But if a piece of prep or homework has been set and it's been set for half an hour or for an hour or for however long, and it's being required to use technology during that time, then try and keep it to that particular time. But when it comes to making the rules about screen time, when devices are turned on in the morning or when devices are set to go off in the evening, have a conversation with your child. It's far better to have a conversation and come up with a shared understanding and a shared agreement of what you collectively think is the best approach and the best timings for all of those things. It also, I'm saying with the experience of having my own kids, it's also good that when they then say, can I have some more time so I can play Fortnite or some game or other, you can say, well, we decided that it would be 1 hour of this or half an hour of that. We came to that agreement, and so we need to stick to that. And by having that conversation and working on those things together, It means that with yourself and your child, you can have a much better conversation, given the shared agreements that you have. And the technology is there to support that. And you can see every week as well from the view, you can see here, this is a phone rather than an iPad. But it shows you very clearly what sorts of tools your children are using, how long they spend on each of those different tools, and helps you have an informed conversation when you might have a review of where you're at with your child's access to their device via screen time. Another healthy habit, and I mentioned it a moment ago, is about using the calendar to record things. It doesn't necessarily have to be the calendar, it could be reminders, but using these can be really helpful in blocking out time. It's very easy for us as adults and for children to procrastinate when it comes to getting things done. But if you've got it on your calendar that you have to get something done in 30 minutes or however long you put that onto your calendar for, that's going to help your child to be much more directly focused on the activity they should be doing during that time. And how better than spending 30 minutes solidly working on something than 90 minutes jumping in and out of it, in and out of it, in and out of it. It means you've then got other time that you can, and your children obviously can, spend focused on things which they want to do other than the actual work or activity that they're doing during that block of time. The next thing, which is a great feature on iOS, is the Do Not Disturb feature. And as you can see in that screenshot there, when you start working with screen time and your calendar and all of this, your phone recognizes when you're due to go into a meeting. Teams, for example, knows when you've got meetings booked in for classes, for activities, so forth and so on. And when those things are about to happen, the device will actually prompt you and say, do you want to turn Do Not Disturb on? It's a great way of removing those distractions. There's lots of research that says that technology doesn't improve teaching or learning, but lots of the research you find, particularly around students' use of devices, which says using a laptop for taking notes or using a device for doing something around learning doesn't work, it's nearly always because of the distractions that are there. And so using features like Do Not Disturb so that your child is able to focus directly on the one task at hand is super useful. And if they still struggle, then there's a great tool in iOS called Guided Access. You can actually lock your child into one particular app through Guided Access, so they're only using that particular tool when it's the right time to do it, and it stops them from being able to go into other tools to distract themselves with other things that are going on. So there are loads of things that we can do to promote healthy and purposeful use of technology when it's right to use that technology. I wanted to talk to you as well about two things further than that. I'm quite worried about how much time I sit in front of my computer, and I'm sure you are too. This rule here, the 20-20-20 rule, is a super easy one to do. The thinking behind it is, and the research has been done around it, says that historically, as we've evolved as a species, and we've gotten used to looking at things at this sort of distance away from us, like a book. You know, if I was to put a book in my hand now, it would be this close to my face. I'd better read it, and that would be great. But when it comes to working at a laptop, the distance from your eyes to the screen are different, and it has an impact on you and your vision. It can give you headaches. It can cause problems for many people. Not everybody, but for some people it can. And so the 20-20-20 rule is really helpful at getting the eyes to sort of reset their focus and to alleviate some of the side effects of sitting in front of a device for so long could actually have. It's a really simple rule. All you need to do every 20 minutes is to have a look at something sort of 20 feet away. Allow your eyes to focus on that. I'd need to take my glasses off to actually do that because these are reading glasses. But spend 20 seconds sort of focusing on that thing 20 feet away, and that will allow your eyes to reset back to their natural state. And again, it helps to reduce any of the side effects from sitting in front of a computer for so long can actually bring. And the final one around healthy habits is sitting properly, having a decent chair, making sure your feet are both flat on the floor whilst you're working, not doing what I'm doing right now, which is crossing my legs and leaning forwards into the screen. I should practice what I preach, so I will do that. I'll put both my feet flat on the floor. But again, consider ergonomics and the seating position. Your arms should be able to rest nicely, and all these things are really important to consider when you're sat down at a desk working with technology. And the same is just as true for you as adults as it is for your children themselves too. The final section in this session, I wanted to spend some time thinking about social media and chat tools. At a young age, what we try and do is make sure that our children are massively supported and kept massively safe. Just like as a baby, we would wrap our baby up really tightly in swaddling clothes to feel safe and secure. So we do that in a digital sense, making sure that there's no risk and we allow our students to keep safe. As our children, young people get older, and these are the ages of sort of years 4, 5 and 6 here, we allow a bit of risk. This is done at BSB through the simple use of things like Teams chat. I'll speak more about Teams chat in just a moment, but that is a safe space. When children are using Teams chat at home, you as parents can keep an eye on the things that are being shared. You can see all those different things that are going on there. And when children are in school and are using Teams, that can be there and be useful too. But as I said, I'll dig more deeply into that in just a moment. As children get a bit older, so they want to try and be social as well. And so children will want to get online, they'll want to share, they'll want to communicate more with their friends. And you may find that with your young people wanting to play games like Roblox or Fortnite, where they can talk to their friends and play games at the same time. What we don't want, though, is a situation where our children are looking like this poor chap here, really frustrated and clearly not in the best of frames of mind. But it's understandable. The world in which we live is different to what it was when we were young. This is a smart fridge. It knows when you run out of milk. It knows when you run out of eggs, and it adds it to your shopping order straight away. You know, the Internet of Things has brought fantastic advances. I arrive home and my Philips Hue lights know that I've come home, and the lights come on. It knows when I get home, and it does all these things for me automatically. It can tell me to stand up every hour. It can track my health and fitness. It can even read my heart rate and let people know if I'm about to have a heart attack. Technology is amazing and can do loads of things, and it's understandable why children want to engage with it so much. But in a world where the future could be things like this, where your phone is actually a bracelet which emits the phone screen onto your wrist, have a look at the website for more information on that one. But in a world where we can't plan for the future, it goes back to that conversation earlier on about future skills, so that whatever children are presented with in the future, they have the right dispositions, the right attitudes, the right literacies, competencies and qualities that enable them to navigate their way through into the future. So going back to that idea about chatting Teams at BSB, it's used for learning conversations, things such as peer support. That encourages collaboration. It also gets children talking about learning. And as I mentioned earlier, talking about learning is a great thing to help your child learn more about how to learn so that they learn better as a direct result. It gives them the opportunity to ask questions, which is obviously important, and linking again back to the skills from the World Economic Forum. Curiosity was slap bang involved in the middle of that as well. It also enables the young people to supply answers. It could be a quick poll, a quick quiz, those sorts of things. But what's great to see is the activities that children are engaging with in Teams Chat in school are all about encouraging these key dispositions that we want our young people to have access to, such as encouraging collaboration, encouraging their curiosity, and encouraging them to share their knowledge. But it is not a social media in and of itself. It isn't Facebook, it isn't Twitter, it isn't TikTok, it isn't any of those things. But it can be used in that way. And if you would like your child to use it outside of school in this sort of a way, the way it's been explained to me is that you as parents can look at that and keep an oversight of that when they're using it for that purpose outside of school. If a school needs to know about something that's happened on Teams Chat, it's easy for the school to go through and find what has been said, but what the school doesn't do is spend their weekends keeping an eye specifically on things that are happening in Teams Chat, which I think is completely reasonable. And when we think about the world in which we live and the relationship that I mentioned before between home, school and child, working together in that sort of wrapper of care around our children is the best approach that we see at the moment. Just sharing some more around social media and chat tools, I think it's important we realise and recognise the age restrictions on some of these tools too. You know, my own children want WhatsApp. Some of their friends are on WhatsApp, and you know, I'm like, no, you can't have WhatsApp. WhatsApp has a 16 age rating. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, Twitch, Skype, Discord. These are all social media tools that young people want to get into and want to use. But if your child is at the primary school, then they shouldn't be old enough. They're not old enough to be accessing these tools, despite however much they might want to, and how many of their friends might be using them as well. What you do with your children and what you allow them to access is entirely up to you. I'm not here to tell you what to do. What I want to try and do is share with you these things here. And you know, companies like Apple and Google and the developers of these different tools, you know, they agree to these age ratings for a reason. You know, Kik is a social media chat tool for adult conversations. That's why the age rating is 18. YouTube, it's very easy to go on YouTube and find completely inappropriate content. Some of that might be, you know, naughty stuff of a certain variety. I'm embarrassed to mention it in this session, to be honest. But you can find other content on there relatively easy that's quite gory, that's inappropriate in lots of different ways. And so keeping an eye on these things and being mindful of them in the conversations you have with your children about how they access these things is super important. I don't think we should be blocking YouTube. Absolutely not. YouTube is a fantastic resource. YouTube themselves have put lots of safeguards in place in recent years as well to help protect young people from inappropriate content. Anyone who uploads any content to YouTube now has to tick a box to say whether it's made for kids or not made for kids, and an age rating is given to content that goes onto YouTube as well to best help and support those users. I don't think blocking these things is the answer. It's definitely the case in the best case scenario and the best practice to talk with young people so that if they do stumble across things which are inappropriate, they do know how to cope with it, how to deal with it, and what to do about that when they do come and find it. I'm mindful that we haven't got much time left, so I'm not going to spend too much more time talking with you. But as children get older, they do want to engage in these tools. And so if we've got a heritage, if we've got a history of having open conversations with the school and with our children about these things, then that is the best approach to take. It's understandable why children want to access these tools. You know, there are billions and billions of users, 1 billion hours worth of YouTube content viewed per day. And if we think about one of the most popular social medias at the moment, TikTok, the average on TikTok for the number of users that are on there is 52 minutes of content being watched on there per day. So it's understandable that children want to use these things, but I'm not somebody who advocates for blocking. It's definitely the case that I want to have conversations about why children want to be on there and all these different things. So what can we do as parents? Well, did you know, for example, that you can, whether you are on an iPad or a MacBook or a Windows Surface or a Windows laptop or a Chromebook, you can set what your default search engine is. Kiddle.co is a free search engine which is based upon Google search and has it set to safe search all the time. Why not think about making that your default browser, default search engine, so when your children are using your devices, they are automatically being protected from any inappropriate content that might come up. Interestingly as well, you may not know this, but that safe search is turned on as default. You can search for lots of things inside the tools that your children are using in school. If I was making a PowerPoint presentation and I wanted to search for an image on Bing search, Bing's image search, by default, the safe search thing is ticked straight away. So your child is always going to be seeing appropriate content related to their search. If you're looking for a place to go to find information, if you find a new app, or your child wants to find a new app, has found a new app, and you want as a parent to see what that tool is all about, Common Sense Media, which is a place that the school uses as well to inform the curriculum around all of these things, is a great site where there are loads of parent-focused short videos which explain pretty much every game and social media tool your child might want to use. And here's an example of one I'll play a short clip of about a tool called Twitch.
What is Twitch? It's a website dedicated to all things gaming. Twitch offers live broadcasts of hundreds of gamers playing, plus the ability to chat with and send messages to other users, as well as product announcements and events. Kids can follow their favorite broadcasters for free or subscribe to their channels for a fee. They can also start broadcasting themselves and get paid. Okay, if you have a young gamer, you know how awesome this all sounds. But not everything about Twitch is fun and games.
So as you can see in that little video there, it's a really, really clear explanation of what the tool is, the risks that are involved, and all of those things as well. So Common Sense Media, a great resource for you to check out for yourselves there. So when it comes to thinking about how we balance the risk, it's all about probabilities, really. We want our young people to be able to access all of these things, but we want them to be able to do it in safe ways and for them to not come to any harm. And the analogy that I always share with people around this is about teaching your child to cross the road using a pedestrian crossing. Obviously, we don't want our children to get run over by a car, but equally, we need them to know how to cross the road. At some point in time, we need to let go of the reins. Same thing about riding a bike. At some point in time, we need to take off those stabilizers. So as a school, as a parent, what we try to do is balance the risk versus harm and the probabilities there. Best will in the world, sometimes, you know, people do end up having accidents when they're crossing the road, but normally these things happen few times than they actually do happen. So that's the thinking behind all of that. I did mention earlier on in the session that there are some free resources that are available to you, and I wanted to share this one first of all. I actually have another job now where I work as head of education at a large technology company. I work there 2 days a week, and me and my team developed for the Internet Safety Day a few weeks ago something that I'm really proud of. It's quite a big document. We operate in Latin America as well, so and in Spain, so we're looking to get some multilingual versions made of this document. But at the moment, I have got an English version, and I've shared it with the team at the school, and that's going to be shared out to you for free through the Cognita Connect app. There's no advertising in there or anything like that. It's just loads of great advice pulled from lots of different places, all together in one handy document related to online safety. And I say it's only 2 weeks old, so it's very, very current. I also wanted to share with you this website here. Now, it's called taminggaming.com. You might not understand the words there in what it's trying to explain, but let me explain it to you. Lots of young people want to play video games, and they want to do it a lot. What this website does is it gives us as adults information, ammunition to help us understand what different games are, what the risks might be, what ages are most appropriate to be playing those sorts of games. And it helps us as adults and as parents to have, again, these open conversations about using games in our free time. Why it's really good is that it makes it, if you find from reading about the different games, let's say Fortnite as an example game, if your child wants to play Fortnite but is too young, and you decide they're too young after having read about that particular game, what the website does, what the database does, at the bottom, it makes suggestions of similar games that allow for similar activities, but for a younger age, so it's more appropriate for other people. So it's a great way of finding alternatives to the games that your children might want to play. There are thousands of video games on the database. The reviews are written by parents, and it's completely free to access. I found this to be a fantastic resource for me, both as a parent and as an educator, sharing things around gaming and the benefits that gaming can bring. So that's a fantastic resource, and I strongly recommend you have a look at that if your child is interested in wanting to play more games. And if, like me, you have a child who wants some games for their birthday, it's also a great place to find some ideas for games and about their appropriateness if you're looking to buy one for your child or for a relative as well. So going back to all of this, when it comes to thinking about technology and its use in education, we can take one of two approaches. We can be restrictive and we can lock everything down, where there's lots of rules and regulations and we dictate to our children what it is they're allowed to do. Or we have an active role where we sit with them, we encourage exploration, we ask them to come up with those rules together with us. Both, and the research sort of holds this to be true, both result in less online risk, both result in a lower risk of harm. But if you're restrictive with your mediation of what your children are going to be using online, they're going to do it anyway. It's just they're not going to tell you about it. Also, because it's being restrictive, they're not going to have as strong digital skills as they would do if they had engaged in active mediation with you and with the school. And so that's my sort of final point here in the session today. Get involved, be curious, just like your children are. Obviously set boundaries, but create those boundaries with your children. And that's the best advice that I can offer, both as a parent and as an educator. And that just leaves me now just to finish off by saying thank you very much for letting me share with you today. Thank you, Emma and the team at BSB2. I'm going to just say, don't forget to fill out the form. And are there any questions?
Thank you so much. What I can see is the chat, and we haven't had any flow of questions come into the chat throughout the session. I've just popped the link in there. In the link, it does take you to a form where it asks about the 3 different issues that we focused on today, and then there's free writing boxes for the parents to add any questions or any suggestions or any follow-up advice, and that we can go back to at a later date. So I guess there are any quick questions now that you would like to ask Mark while he's online. You could enter those into the chat. Otherwise, Mark and I will have a follow-up session with our digital leaders and have a look at the survey forms that you may fill in. Password. Okay, let me go back and I'll just have a pop another link in. Everybody. Now, sorry, it was only shut down for the organisation, so I've now opened it up to anybody could respond to the survey. Sorry about that. Technology skills. Right, I see people are leaving now. So Mark, I just wanted to say thank you. It was super thought-provoking. My takeaway as a parent, I guess, is to really think carefully about that screen time management and managing those distractions. It's me as much as my children. And whilst you have been super complimentary about the work of the school, I know and the team know that we are so much on a journey with this. And we've got so much to focus on. We've got so much to build on and improve on, to give our students the very best learning experience we can. So therefore the parents' reflections from this session are always super welcomed. And just to build on from this was a really good introductory webinar, and then we have sort of a flurry of activity coming on throughout the rest of the year. We're going to dig deeper into future skills with a guest parent speaker from a higher education institution, and they're focusing on preparing their students for future life and future work. That's going to be a really interesting webinar coming up in April. So look out for that on the Cognita Connect app. And thanks so much everybody for your time today. Sorry, I'm just reading this last chat message. I'm worried about kids being too young to understand when we talk to them about online tech. Well, we can work to, right, Mark, go on, I'll let you answer that last question.
I've just shared a website resource, thinkyouKnow.co.uk/parents into the chat. Thank you for your comment this year. I found this really useful to me over the years as both an educator and as a parent. The link I've given you there is for the parents section to help you understand more. Your comments talks more about children not understanding. When you go to the website, you will find age-appropriate resources on there, videos, so forth and so on, that you can watch yourself first, and you can then share the ones that you think are appropriate to help your child understand things around using technology online. Again, it goes back to that little diagram that I showed earlier, 0 to 6, keep them safe, so forth and so on. I don't know how old your child is. I'm guessing if you're joining us today, they're somewhere between the age of 0 and 11 years old. But wherever they fall along that line, they will want to use technology. Before my children could speak, they could manipulate the screen of an iPad, and children are going to want to be able to do this. You know, the more and more they grow and develop, and all we can do as parents is do our best to support them. But like the Common Sense Media website, that Think You Know website again is a fantastic resource. It's won so many awards for its work over the years, and it's an easy share for you to try and help you have those conversations with your child.
I couldn't have answered it better myself, other than to say, to complement that, we are following the commonsense.org e-safety curriculum in school as well. So I do note, though, that's something that I'd like to share with parents in the future, so you can really understand how we are supporting the children at each age and stage of their development. Okay, thank you so much, Mark. Thank you very much to the parents who've attended today. I hope you found that useful. I look forward to reading your comments on this survey. And yeah, thank you. Have a lovely evening. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Recording the session now, please.